everyone, and welcome to the RS Technical Solutions Tech Talk. I'm your host, Miguel Gudino from RS Americas, and for today's video, we're going to be talking with Eaton about their PowerXL drives and all the cool features that comes within that series. So now, joining us virtually here in our studio lab from Eaton, John, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our viewers and tell us what you do at Eaton.
Sure. My name is John Woodburn. I am an application engineer for our OEM sales team. And as such, my responsibilities are to be technically capable and familiar with all electrical codes, all of Eaton's electrical portfolio products.
Right.
And I've been with, so some of my specialization is with the drives and automation products, but prior to coming to Eaton, I was a design engineer, engineering manager, R&D manager for a number of other companies, all working within the automation and electrical engineering spaces.
Nice.
So that's my background before coming to Eaton and my role at Eaton.
Well, thank you for that, John. Really excited to have you here. So let's just get right into it. Eaton's PowerXL drives, right? Can you explain to us the overall PowerXL drive offers that Eaton provides and what models are available in the offer?
Sure. PowerXL is a model family within Eaton's offerings, and that includes what we call micro drives, which are 30 horsepower or less drives. It includes general purpose drives. It includes HVAC specific drives. And then it also includes enclosed drives that would be low harmonic drives, enclosed semi-custom drives where a customer could ask us to not only control or offer an enclosure for the drive that might be NEMA 4X or some other enclosure rating, but they might want harmonic mitigation. They might want line reactors, filters, other things built into the drive. And so that's the portfolio that is the PowerXL series. We have a number of other drives that, while they may not be called PowerXL, they do leverage all of the same technologies.
Right. Okay, so many models to choose from, right? So let's go ahead and get a little bit more in depth on these drives. Can you give us?
Sure. If we focus on the top three, so to speak, of the PowerXL line, that would be the DM1, which is a micro drive. Micro drive, for those who aren't familiar, implies that the drive is available in 25 horsepower or less. And so what that typically means is you can get like a half horsepower, you can get a 3/4 horsepower, 1 horsepower, 1.5, 2, all the way up to technically it's 30 horsepower, but it depends on the application whether you can do 25 or 30. And some of the best features of the DM1 would be the size. It's physically upwards of 30% smaller than our competitors. It's a bookshelf style drive, so it can mount side by side. It includes on board, if you buy the DM1 Pro, which has a keypad with a display, it includes Ethernet IP, Modbus TCP, Ethernet style communications on board, BACnet, which is a building management system typically reserved for HVAC, includes that on board both in an Ethernet style and a serial style. And there are some optional communication cards that would mount outside the drive. Probably one of the biggest strengths for the product, besides its overall size, we have actually one less frame, so our watt density, as they call it, is much higher than our competitors. But some of the bigger features, for example, is this product has, when you buy the Pro version with the Ethernet, it has web user interface, so you don't need drive programming software. A person could, simply plug in a tablet or other device that can use a browser like Chrome or Edge to write to a specific IP address, which would be the specific drive. So that would allow any customer, any end user to program the drive, to troubleshoot the drive, and it all has security, so cyber security. So you could have multiple users with passwords, all those features.
Right.
Within the DM1, it's still a general purpose drive, but it is designed in a manner that allows you to do pump control, to do fan control. It has a PID loop, and in the what we call multi-purpose application or role, it will control what's called a permanent magnet motor or a sensorless vector control motor. So this drive is capable of controlling AC induction volts hertz, SVC, permanent magnet motors. And it's also, from that standpoint, it's also available in a single phase to 3-phase variant. So you could get 115 volt single phase input up to 2 horsepower. You could get 230 volt input up to 7.5 horsepower. And then the output is a 230 volt 3-phase output. Where that plays would be oftentimes in the agricultural and I would say less industrial settings for a drive application, right? This drive is also capable of, well, it also is offered in 230 volt 3-phase to 20 horsepower, 460 goes to the 30 horsepower I mentioned, and then 575 to 25 horsepower. We also offer it without the keypad, but when you do that, you lose some features like the Ethernet communications. This drive in the Pro version includes SIL2 safety rated safe torque off contacts, which are very popular with a lot of the machine building customers.
Yes, that's right.
It is also with a Type 1 kit, it's plenum rated, meaning that in the HVAC world, it could actually be mounted in a plenum, an air plenum. That's something that's a little bit different for most drive manufacturers. And it's proven to be a very popular drive. It's very, very cost competitive from that standpoint. As far as who would use it, it would be very popular with people that typically are using 25 horsepower or less, machine builders, HVAC suppliers, general purpose, ag, that kind of business. And when you go to the next product, which is our DG1, G standing for general purpose or industrial purpose, that product, so a microdrive is designed really as a one piece, you buy it, and that's all you have. A general purpose drive or an industrial drive, because they go to higher horsepowers, they're typically built in a more modular spare part type manner. So you can actually replace all the parts on a DG1 or a DH1. So that's one of the biggest differences between a DM and a DG as far as features go. That when you get to the larger horsepowers, which most manufacturers don't keep on the shelf, those can be repaired if necessary. You could replace a control card, you could replace the keypad, you could replace the power board, you could replace an IO card. Those things are designed to be replaceable. So the DG1, being an industrial drive, is offered in 1 horsepower up through, I think it's 1,000 horsepower at 460 volt. If it's 575, it might be 800 horsepower, et cetera. It's not offered in a single phase offering today, single to 3-phase, primarily because it's just a larger drive. And as people go above 30 horsepower, they rarely go single phase. So the DG1 itself being modular, there's 3 option card slots. So you could add inputs and outputs, relays, communications, things like that to the drive. It does have a Modbus RTU serial port. It does have the Ethernet capability. So Ethernet IP, Modbus TCP, Profinet, and there are separate cards like Profibus cards and things like that. And that's a product that as we continue the updating and life cycle of that product, we're going to be adding things like EtherCAT and single pair Ethernet, those type of communication protocols. That product itself is offered in IP21 and IP54 enclosures. So you've got a little bit more of an enclosure opportunity or option than the DM1. And also the DG is part of our enclosed drive family. So you could go to NEMA 4, NEMA 4X, NEMA 12, NEMA 3R enclosures. The DG1 has STO on it. And the DG1 is very flexible from that standpoint. So you can still do your SVC, what we call sensorless vector control. You can do your permanent magnet motor. And it also has a web user interface. So again, with like
nice.
the DM1, you can connect a tablet, a laptop, any device that has a browser on it, even an HMI with a browser. You can connect that to the drive, and then you can program the drive, you can monitor the drive, you can collect some data, and it has the user levels of security, what we call cybersecurity.
Right.
So that product is typically going to be used in all different applications, as far as, things from pumping to machine builders, conveyor systems, HVAC, rock crushing, all kinds of whatever applications you would have for a drive, that's where this drive fits in.
Nice.
And then when we go to the DH1, that is a variant of the DG1. So it's going to use the same power boards. It's going to look the same. It's going to have the same keypad. It's a removable keypad for both the DG and the DH, so you could mount it on a control box door.
Right.
And you can use the same keypad as an external keypad for the DM1. So the families are related that way. The DH1 is an HVAC drive. So while it's the same drive as a DG1, we've modified the firmware to be more HVAC centric. So you're going to get a fan control mode that's going to include fire mode or damper control, things that HVAC people care about. It also is offered in an enclosed version that we do as a standard. So your traditional HVAC applications would be theoretically a drive with bypass contactors. And so rather than have someone have to build that themselves, we package that so you could buy it with a safety switch or disconnect switch, with the traditional handoff auto, and with the either 2 or 3 contactor bypass. And that's right off the shelf. So you don't have the extended lead times. You don't have the hand-built at time of order behavior. Now, the one thing about HVAC is, as traditionally spoken, it's limited to 250 horsepower at 460 volt. That's just typical HVAC. You don't see that application above 250 horsepower. I haven't in my 30-some years in the industry.
Right.
So the benefits of that product, would be what we call variable torque applications, although it'll run constant torque. So you can run it in anything, but it is in the catalog. It is sized and numbered for what we call variable torque applications. So the advantage there is if you're doing a fan, an axial type fan, or a centrifugal type fan, or you're doing a pump with a similar pumping mechanism, what we would call a centrifugal pump, or a pump like that, as opposed to a positive displacement pump or a low pump or a screw compressor type. The DH1 is sized accordingly for that application. So when you're using that, you're actually using less horsepower, and so it would be it would be, for example, one size lower to run the same horsepower motor, solely because of the load. And that makes that drive tailored for the market and less expensive when compared to the DG1, which can still do everything, but is typically sized at the constant torque, which would be like conveyors and machine tools. That drive also now has the web user interface. It's also designed to work with permanent magnet motors and SVC. So those are the 3 PowerXL drives. They none of them offer what we call closed loop control. We are constantly developing new products, and we have other drives within the portfolio that can do that. But those 3 are not included with that today.
Okay, I got you. Well, thank you, John, for focusing on each one and seeing how each of these can fit in certain markets. I'm sure this helps out our viewers on what to gravitate towards, right?
You're welcome.
So I do have a certain situation for you. Let's say, and this is something we get asked frequently, right?
Sure.
We have a customer and they have an application that requires a drive as a general application, right? And they're closely looking at a DM1 drive and a DG1 drive, but they can't quite decide what version to go with or what series to go with. When would you think it would be better to use a DG1 general purpose drive over a DM1 micro drive? What are things that customers should identify before deciding which drive to go to?
Sure, that's a good question. It's something that a lot of people would, I don't want to say struggle with, but would ask that
Mhm.
same question. And
Yeah.
so the way I approach it, if you can't tell me specifically what the load is,
Mhm,
okay,
mhm.
um, I would want to know the horsepower. I would sure like
Okay.
to know the load because I'd like to
Mhm.
figure out the type of the load. But let's say that all we know is the horsepower.
Yes.
And this only becomes relevant if it's, let's say, 460 volt, 30 horsepower or less, right? Because it's not offered above that. So
Mhm.
deciding between a DM1 and a DG1 to me comes down to a number of factors. Number one is going to be the horsepower and the range of
Mhm.
horsepowers a person might have in their product. So, for example, if we're talking about fractional horsepower motors that are usually relatively simple applications, the DM1 would be the logical choice. For
Mhm.
one,
Okay.
because you can get, if
Right.
you're, let's say you're doing a half horsepower or even a 1 horsepower motor, it's going to be smaller, it's going to be less
Mhm.
expensive, and it's fully capable of controlling the load the way you want.
Okay.
If you're doing, let's say, more than 1 horsepower and your application involves multiple PID loops, so maybe you
Mhm.
want to
Mhm.
control temperature like a temperature controller, but you only want to have the drive there, you would consider the DG1. Or let's say
Okay.
that you have some special pump or fan capabilities, and there might be a feature within the parameter set that you'd like to take advantage of, like damper control
Right.
or a fire mode, things like that,
Mhm.
that the
Mhm.
DM1 wouldn't offer. But the biggest thing I would say would be the horsepower and the amount of IO you need. So the
Okay. Mhm.
DG1, the DG1 on board has 8 digital inputs and 4 outputs.
Okay.
Okay, whereas a DM1 has 4 inputs and 2 outputs, and only
Okay. Mhm.
one what we call Form C relay.
Okay.
So
Mhm.
the bigger, if you want to set up a criteria, the criteria for choosing is going to be the horsepower first and foremost, and the voltage, right?
Mhm.
Then it's going to be, if you know it, what the load is. Is it a conveyor? Is it a fan? Is it a pump? Is it a rock crusher? What is it? And then
Right.
finally, it's going to be, what do you need from a standpoint of IO? Do you
Mhm.
just
Mhm.
need to start and stop it? Do you need
Mhm.
to bring a bunch of, let's say, switches or sensors in to drive things like preset speeds or take advantage of the PID loops?
Right. Right.
So that would be the two ways that I would decide that. But you always
Okay.
start with voltage, horsepower, and load, and then
Yeah.
you go to
Yeah.
those extra features.
Nice. Nice. Well, thank
And
you
then,
for
of
going
course,
over that.
for your
Oh, go ahead.
customer, the last, sorry to interrupt, but your
Yeah.
customer, obviously, price and physical size may also matter.
Okay. Well, thank you for going over that situation. It's somewhat of a common question that we get. Do we go with this
Absolutely.
drive or this drive? Now, I know you touched on it a little bit with accessories and
Mhm.
for the PowerXL, but any accessory that you would want to focus on or that you see commonly used in applications with your customers?
Yeah, there are a few.
Mhm.
I mean, I think first and foremost is going to be the communications protocols that you want, right? So a customer might want Modbus TCP to communicate to a PLC, or they might want Modbus RTU, a serial communication, to communicate to a sensor and leverage the
Mhm.
PID loop. So communication is always, in my opinion, very important. What communication protocol will the drive potentially use? The next thing would be the IO, and with the DG1, you have the option of more IO on board, right? And different types of IO,
Yeah.
analog
Yeah.
IO, inputs, outputs,
Mhm.
digital inputs, outputs, etc. As far as other features, now that they all have the web user interface, I think that's a push, right? They're all the
Right.
same.
Yes.
Physical size, and then the last thing that would be a feature you might consider would be the enclosure options, right? The fact that in the DG1 it's an IP21 or IP54 open style drive, but you can also do enclosed. So those are some
Right.
of the features, but purely from a feature on board would be communications and the IO
Mhm.
capability, because the drives are relatively equal in
Okay.
almost every other application.
Right, right. Okay, understood. Well, really good to hear all these additional features and accessories that
Sure.
come with the PowerXL drives gives a little bit more precise solution for our customers, right? So I do have one last situation that I want to go over, as it's another thing that comes up frequently when talking to customers, right? So could you answer why a customer would look at the PowerXL offers above, let's say, Allen Bradley PowerFlex?
Sure. Primarily, let's say if we talk about the DM1, that comparison between that and the PowerFlex 525 or even the 527, we are between 3 and 30% smaller at the same horsepower. So physical size matters. It is a bookshelf drive, but it has a web user interface, which the PowerFlex does not. Horsepower range is the same. Features and functionality, I know through firsthand knowledge that the firmware and the capabilities of the newerly released DM1, it's about 4 years old, versus the PowerFlex. This drive is very, very capable in the permanent magnet motor SVC applications. And I think that it has a strong competitive advantage versus the PowerFlex. The last thing is, as the DM1 meets the latest UL standards, and those standards changed about 4 years ago. And I know that the PowerFlex and our competitors are trying to get grandfathered. Some of those UL standards have to do with flammability of the actual product itself. If it's in a fire or something, are the plastics self-extinguishing, or do they just burn wildly? Some of those things.
Right. Yeah.
The last thing would be price. Right. The DM1 is very, very, very cost competitive when compared to the PowerFlex drive. So those would be the areas that I would focus on. We have the capability, we have all the tools to talk to Allen Bradley PLCs, whether it be what we call EDS files or AOIs, which is the instructions that will allow Rockwell PLCs to talk directly to our drive without any complex programming or anything. And we do that quite often with customers.
Okay. But yeah, really good to know, and glad that you were able to give some insight on that, as it's a common question we get when finding alternatives with our customers, right? Well, John, that pretty much answers all the questions I had today. But before we sign out, where would you recommend our viewers to learn more about Eaton and PowerXL drives?
So Eaton has a very complete portfolio as far as the different products. The website is a very, very good site. When you want to look at products specifically, rather than going into the website and clicking and hunting and pecking and finding your way through if you're not sure where stuff is, because when you first look at the Eaton website, Eaton is in so many different segments. We're in data centers, we're in power, we're in low voltage, we're in medium voltage, we're in high. I could go on and on, right?
Yes.
So what I recommend to customers is, you can go online and search eaton.com/PowerXL or /DM1 or /DG1 or DH1, and that'll take you right to that website. Awesome. Within that website, then we explain the different features and the different technologies. You have access to all the manuals, you have access to part numbers, catalogs, software, firmware, all of that. And probably one of the other great reasons to consider Eaton is that all of our software tools for our drives and a lot of our other products are free, and our tech support is free. Nice. So if you don't find what you're looking for there, the website has links to be able to talk to other people or to talk to yourselves when you're working with customers to be able to, bring information to their attention.
Yes. Well, thank you for that, John. Any final thoughts?
Well, I think probably, to summarize, Eaton's drive portfolio is very competitive with all of the big players, and we have the resources. The products are assembled in the Dominican Republic,
Mhm.
So, we're on this side of the hemisphere. Our stocking locations, we have two major stocking hubs, which are Duncan, South Carolina, and on the West Coast. But these products have been designed recently, so they're all up to date and all up to the latest
Nice.
codes. And the last thing is that all of these products have been tested to reach 100 kA SCCR rating. So you can go into our installation manual and you'll see different ways to get to 65K, 35K, 100K. And we'll tell you exactly what part numbers to use. We'll tell you, you can use any fuse, or you have to use this breaker or any breaker.
Right.
And by UL code, that makes it very easy for our customers and the users to implement the drive in their control scenarios to meet the local electrical codes.
Right.
And then finally, what I would say is our design center of excellence is in Milwaukee. We have technical resources that are available 24/7. They're free. You don't have to have a PO, or you don't have to buy the product to ask questions. You can just call up. It's divided between, they may call it pre-sale, but it's things that engineers would want to know, like drawings, CAD drawings, or documentation, or programming
Right.
questions, etc. And then we have a post-sale, startup, installation, commissioning, programming support group as well,
Right.
that are there ready to help you.
Well, thank you, John. I really appreciate your time here today for going over Eaton's PowerXL Drive series. And I hope our viewers learned a little bit more about Eaton Solutions. And
My pleasure.
to our viewers, yeah, thank you, John. And to our viewers, thank you for watching. Remember to go ahead and check out RS and Eaton for your future drive applications. And we'll go ahead and catch you next time on the RS Technical Solutions Tech Talk.